She's nothing. She married into this family with empty hands and she'll leave the same way. That's what my mother-in-law said about me, not behind my back, to my face. At my own kitchen table, 3 days after I gave birth to her grandchild, I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, then looked at my husband. My husband has said nothing either. And I understood something in that moment that would take me 4 more years to fully act on. I understood that I was alone in this. My name is not important right now. What matters is this. I am 31 years old. I have a daughter named Maisie who just turned 7. I am a licensed CPA and a senior forensic analyst at one of the largest financial consulting firms in the Pacific Northwest. I have a team of 12 people under me. I have recovered over $40 million in fraudulent assets for clients over the past 3 years alone. Nobody in my ex-husband's family knew any of that, and I never corrected them. They thought I was a bookkeeper at a small accounting office. That's what my ex-husband told them when we got married. Because he was embarrassed, he said, that I made more than him. He didn't want the dynamic to feel weird at family dinners. I let it go. I was 26, I was in love, and I thought it didn't matter what his family thought about my job. I thought what mattered was that we loved each other. I was very young. My ex-husband's name is Preston, his mother's name is Loretta. His father passed away when Preston was in college, and Loretta had spent the years since turning her grief into control, over her house, over her finances, over her son, and eventually over me. Loretta was the kind of woman who sent back food at restaurants not because anything was wrong with it, but because she liked the feeling of sending it back. She kept score of every favor she had ever done for anyone and invoiced you for them. Not with money, but with obligation. You owed her. You would always owe her. When Preston and I started dating, she was polite to me in the careful way you are polite to something you haven't decided how to categorize yet. When we got engaged, she cried. But the wrong kind of crying, the kind that's really just disappointment dressed up for an audience. When I got pregnant 18 months into our marriage, she announced the news to her entire church group before I had told my own mother. That was Loretta. Preston's older brother is named Wade. Wade is 41, divorced, and lives 15 minutes from Loretta in a house she co-signed for. He has a girlfriend named, I'll call her what the family called her, Candy, which was not actually her name but a nickname they gave her because she worked at a candy boutique in the mall when they met. Candy wore rhinestone everything and laughed too loud at Wade's jokes, and never once asked me a single question about myself in 4 years of holidays. I didn't dislike Candy, I just want to be clear about who these people were. Maisie's birthday is April 14th. For her 6th birthday, I planned a party at a botanical garden 20 minutes from our house. It wasn't extravagant. I rented a private section of the garden, hired a face painter, ordered a custom cake from a bakery Maisie loved because they always let her smell the frosting. I invited 12 kids from her kindergarten class. I invited Preston's family with 6 weeks' notice. Preston and I had separated 8 months before that party. The divorce wasn't final yet, but we were living apart, and we had agreed to co-parent with as little disruption to Maisie as possible. I thought that meant his family would still show up for their granddaughter, their niece. They did not show up. The morning of the party, I got a text from Wade, not even a call, that said, "Sorry, something came up. Give Maisie our love." That was the entire message. No explanation, no rain check, no alternative plan. Loretta didn't text at all. She just didn't come. Maisie spent the first 40 minutes of her own birthday party standing near the garden entrance, watching the gate. She had this expression on her face that I can't fully describe. It wasn't exactly sadness because she's 6 and she didn't completely understand, but it was a kind of waiting that was too old for her face. Every time the gate opened, she looked up. At some point, she walked over to me and said, "Did Grandma Loretta forget?" I told her Grandma Loretta had something come up, that we'd see her soon. Maisie looked at me for a moment, the way children look at you when they're deciding whether to believe you or be kind enough to pretend they do. Then she said, "Okay," and went back to the face painter. I stood there behind my sunglasses and breathed very slowly for a long time. 3 days later, I found out why they hadn't come. Wade had taken Candy to Las Vegas for her birthday. A long weekend. They had posted about it extensively, Slot machines, a rooftop pool, a steakhouse that cost $400 a plate. Loretta had flown out to join them for the last 2 days. She posted a picture of the three of them at a fountain with the caption, "Family time is everything." Preston saw it before I did and didn't say anything to me. I found it because Maisie was using my phone to video call her cousin and scrolled past my Instagram accidentally. I looked at that photo for a long time, then I sent Loretta a card in the mail. Inside the card was a single crisp $1 bill and a note that said, "For Maisie's birthday. Glad family time is everything." I want to be honest, I knew what I was doing. It wasn't impulsive. I thought about it for 2 full days before I sent it. I knew it would cause a reaction. I knew Loretta would not let it pass quietly. And I knew that when she came for me, I would be ready in ways she had no idea about. The card landed like a grenade. Loretta called Preston within an hour of receiving it. I know this because Preston showed up at my apartment that evening with the particular expression he gets when he's been activated by his mother. Jaw tight, eyes not quite meeting mine, voice carefully even in the way that means he's actually furious. "That was unnecessary," he said. "The dollar?" I said. "Or the card? She's my mother. She missed your daughter's birthday to go to Vegas and post about how family time is everything." He didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he said she wants an apology. I looked at him. She's not going to get one. He left. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my kitchen in the quiet and thought about the 11 months of separation, about the mediation sessions, about the custody schedule we'd been negotiating for half a year. I thought about how every time Loretta had ever made me feel small, I had apologized or deflected or smoothed it over, because I thought keeping the peace was the same as being strong. I wasn't keeping peace. I was just making myself smaller and smaller, and the space I vacated Loretta filled. Not anymore. Here's what I haven't told you yet. 4 months before Maisie's birthday, my firm was contracted to conduct a forensic audit on a commercial real estate portfolio in our city. It was a large, tangled portfolio, a mix of retail spaces, small office buildings, warehouse conversions, the kind of work I find genuinely interesting because there are always surprises buried in the numbers. One of the properties in the portfolio was a strip of mixed-use commercial space in a neighborhood about 8 minutes from my apartment. 4 retail units on the ground floor, 2 small offices above, nothing remarkable. Except when I pulled the full ownership records, I found that one of those retail units, a corner unit currently operating as a home goods boutique, was in a holding LLC that was partially controlled by a name I recognized immediately. Loretta's LLC, the one she had formed after her husband died to manage a small rental property he had left her. I sat with that information for a long time. I want to be clear, I did not do anything improper. The audit was arm's length. I disclosed the personal connection to my firm's conflict of interest officer immediately. I was recused from the specific evaluation of that unit, but I was not recused from the conversation that happened 2 months later, when the private equity group we were advising decided they wanted to acquire the full portfolio. All of it. Every unit. By that point, my divorce was nearly final. Loretta had stopped pretending to be civil. She had told mutual acquaintances that I had poisoned Preston against his own family, that I was using Maisie as a weapon, and that I had tricked her son into marrying me under false pretenses, by which she meant, apparently, that she hadn't known I was competent. The acquisition was a straightforward process. The sellers were motivated. The price was fair. I prepared the financial analysis that my firm submitted to the equity group, and I did not reach out to Loretta to give her any advance notice that the building she had a stake in was about to be absorbed into a portfolio controlled by people who had no interest in renewing boutique leases at below-market rates. That was not my job. My job was the numbers. The first hint Loretta had that something was changing came when the boutique received a notice that their lease renewal was under review. The new portfolio management company was reassessing all tenant arrangements. She called Preston in a panic. He called me. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked. I said I can't discuss ongoing client work. There was a long pause. Was this deliberate? "I did my job," I said. "The same job I've been doing for 6 years that your family thought was bookkeeping at a small office." Another pause, longer this time. "You're a forensic analyst," he said slowly, like the words were rearranging something in his head. "Senior forensic analyst," I said. "Since I was 28. He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "She's going to think you did this on purpose," he finally said. "I can't control what she thinks," I said. "I can only tell you that I disclosed every conflict properly. I was recused where required, and the analysis I submitted was accurate." I paused. "And Preston, the reason your mother is in this position is that she has been collecting rent from a below-market lease for 11 years without reinvesting in the property or planning for succession. That's not something I did to her. That's what the numbers have looked like for over a decade." He didn't call back that day. The lease negotiations stretched over several weeks. Loretta hired a local attorney, someone she found through a church connection. Not a commercial real estate specialist. This became apparent almost immediately. She also, at some point, got it into her head that I had targeted her specifically, that I had engineered the entire acquisition as personal revenge. She told this to anyone who would listen, including, eventually, her own attorney, who apparently repeated it in a preliminary meeting with the portfolio company's legal team. That meeting did not go well for Loretta. I know this because I received a call from the portfolio company's general counsel, who wanted to make sure I was aware that my name had been raised and that they would be prepared to respond if necessary. I thanked him and told him my documentation was complete and available. What happened next is the part I keep coming back to. The portfolio company's lead attorney, a woman I had worked with on 2 previous engagements, someone whose judgment I trust completely, scheduled a formal meeting to address the dispute. Loretta was there with her church connection attorney. The portfolio team was there. And I was there as a consultant, because the financial records in question were mine. Loretta walked in and saw me and went completely still. She had not known I would be there. I had not known until the morning of the meeting that she had escalated her complaint to the point that my presence was necessary. Her attorney leaned over and said something to her in a low voice. She shook her head. The portfolio team's lead attorney opened the meeting by introducing everyone present. When she got to me, she said my name, my title, my firm, and then said calmly, "She prepared the financial analysis that supported this acquisition. If you have questions about the methodology, she can answer them." Loretta's attorney looked at his notes. Then he looked at me. Then he said slowly, "I'm sorry, what firm did you say?" The lead attorney repeated it. There was a very specific silence in that room, the kind that happens when someone has just understood that they have badly miscalculated. Loretta's attorney was quiet for a moment and then said in a different tone entirely, "I may need a brief recess to consult with my client." I looked at Loretta while they conferred. She did not look at me. She was staring at the table. I thought about Maisie at the garden gate. The way she looked up every time it opened, I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be accurate about that. I felt something quieter, something more like, "I see you now, and I am not afraid of you, and that is enough." The boutique lease was renegotiated at market rate. Loretta's stake in the holding LLC was bought out at fair value. She made money, technically, though less than she would have if the property had been managed better over the years. Her attorney sent my firm a letter attempting to allege impropriety. My firm's legal team responded within 72 hours with a documentation package that was, I was told, comprehensive enough to discourage any further action. We did not hear from them again. Preston and I finalized our divorce 4 weeks after that meeting. The custody agreement gives Maisie 2 weeks per month with each of us, with holidays alternating. I have primary residence. The child support is calculated correctly, in full, on a documented schedule. I made sure of that myself. Maisie does not go to Loretta's house. That was not a condition I imposed. It was a condition Maisie arrived at herself, in her own time, when she told her therapist that she didn't feel safe there because Grandma Loretta makes Mommy sad. Her therapist relayed this to me. I sat with it for a long time. I'm not going to pretend that felt like victory. When your 7-year-old has to develop emotional vocabulary for family dysfunction before she's learned her multiplication tables, nobody wins. But she's okay, she really is. She has this way of laughing when something catches her off guard. Full body, completely unguarded, and when I hear it, I think, we're going to be fine. This past April, Maisie turned 7. We had the party in our backyard this time. String lights, a sprinkler, a playlist she made herself that included, I'm serious, 3 separate songs from the Moana 2 soundtrack and one by a 70s rock band she discovered on my phone and decided was her favorite. Her friends came. My sister came. My mom came. 2 of my closest friends came with their kids. Nobody from Preston's family came. I had not invited them. At some point in the afternoon, Maisie climbed into my lap, which she doesn't do much anymore, because she's 7 and very busy and independent. She sat there for a minute watching her friends run through the sprinkler. Then she said, "Mommy, this is the best party." I said, "Yeah?" She said, "Yeah. Because everyone here loves me." I held her a little tighter and didn't say anything for a while. She's right. Everyone there did love her. That's the part I couldn't have planned. That's the part I couldn't have engineered or calculated or documented. You spend so much time protecting them from what's been taken away that you almost miss what's actually there. Loretta never apologized. I don't expect her to. People like Loretta don't apologize because they have structured their entire emotional lives around the belief that they are never the cause of their own suffering. Everything that has happened to her is something that was done to her. That's an exhausting way to live. And it's also, eventually, completely isolating. She has the money from the buyout. She has Wade and Candy. She has her church group. She does not have Maisie. I think about that sometimes, not with satisfaction, but with something more like grief. Not for myself, for Maisie. Because Maisie deserved a grandmother who showed up at the garden gate, and that grandmother existed somewhere in Loretta. I have to believe that. But she couldn't get out past the scorekeeping and the control and the need to be the most important person in every room. That's not something I did. That's something Loretta chose over and over for years, until it became who she was. The dollar in the card wasn't revenge. I want you to understand that. It was a receipt. It was me, for the first time in 4 years, refusing to pretend that what happened hadn't happened. Refusing to accept that the person who didn't show up for my daughter got to walk away without even acknowledging the absence. $1. That's what I decided her behavior was worth acknowledging. And then, I just did my job. A few weeks ago, I was putting Maisie to bed and she asked me, out of nowhere, the way kids do, "Mommy, are you happy?" I thought about it. I actually thought about it, which I appreciated that she asked a question worth thinking about. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." She considered this. "Then because of me?" "Partly," I said, "but also because I figured something out." "What?" I thought about how to say it in a way a 7-year-old could hold. "That being quiet isn't the same as being weak," I said, "and that you don't have to explain yourself to people who are never listening." She thought about that for a second. Then she said, "Like when you don't argue with me when I'm being unreasonable, you just wait." I laughed. "Exactly like that." She seemed satisfied. She turned over toward her nightlight and said, "Okay. Good night, Mommy. Good night, baby." I turned off the overhead light and stood in the hall for a second and just listened to the quiet house. My house. Our house. It sounded exactly like it was supposed to. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in this story. Not the meeting, not the lease, not the dollar in the envelope, but the thing underneath all of it. The mechanism. Loretta spent years believing that power meant being the loudest person in the room. That control meant making others feel uncertain about themselves. She talked over me at dinner tables. She corrected me in front of her son. She decided what I was, a bookkeeper, a nobody, someone her son had settled for, and she repeated it so many times that it became the only version of me she could see. The problem with that is that when you decide someone is small, you stop paying attention to them. And when you stop paying attention, you miss things. She missed a lot. I'm not going to pretend I'm some perfectly calculated person who planned all of this from the beginning. I didn't. I fell in love. I got married. I had a daughter, and then I spent 4 years quietly absorbing the weight of someone else's contempt, because I thought that was what keeping a family together looked like. It wasn't strategy. It was exhaustion. But here's what I did do. I kept doing my work. I kept being good at it. I kept showing up. Not for Loretta's approval, not to prove anything to Preston, but because the work itself mattered to me and I was not going to let someone's low opinion of me become my ceiling. That's the thing nobody tells you about being underestimated. It has a cost. It wears on you. It makes you question yourself. It makes you smaller in ways you don't fully notice until you're standing in a garden watching your 6-year-old look for someone who isn't coming. But it also has a strange, quiet advantage. People who dismiss you stop watching you. And the moment they stop watching is the moment you can move freely. I didn't engineer Loretta's situation, the numbers did that. Years of decisions she had made, about how to manage her property, about what to invest in, about who she thought she needed to pay attention to. Those decisions had consequences that arrived on a timeline I didn't set. I just happened to be the person who could read the documentation clearly. What I did choose was the dollar. That was mine. That was me deciding I was done pretending that someone's absence had no weight, that a child could be forgotten on her birthday and the adults involved could walk away clean. $1. Not cruelty, just refusal. Refusal to absorb it quietly one more time. Maisie is 7 now. She is funny and loud and occasionally completely unreasonable, and she laughs with her whole body. She doesn't spend time at Loretta's house. That wasn't my decision. It was hers. Arrived at in the way children arrive at things, slowly and then all at once, when they finally processed what they felt. I think about what I want her to understand as she gets older. Not revenge. Not scorekeeping. Something quieter than that. That integrity is not what you announce, it's what you do when no one important is watching. That being underestimated is only fatal if you start believing it yourself. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can say in a room full of people who have written you off is absolutely nothing, and just let the record speak. That's what I did. The record spoke. And Maisie, sitting in my lap at her birthday party, surrounded by people who actually showed up, she said, "Everyone here loves me." She was right. That's the only number that ever really mattered.